These are the notes from Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is all about database redesign. So what you're doing is you are taking a database that you've already created, which is what we've been talking about exclusively so far, and making some changes to it, possibly because of errors or because there are some new requirements by the user. And so these are the objectives. We're going to focus on the SQL that's required to do these things. So obviously that's not SQL, but the other things are. So there's a lot more to SQL than just the select command that we have done mostly up to this point. And we're going to take a look at some of those other options. Okay, so the first one is something called correlated subquery. So here's the deal with a correlated subquery. It is a select statement. It's nested inside of another one. And here's the key. It contains a reference to one or more columns in the outer query. First, we're going to take a look at this query right here. And this one just demonstrates the uses of aliases. So we've done that before with expressions. You know, if you don't give a name to an expression, you get something like expression 1001, expression 1002, and so on. What we're doing here is, right here, you can put the word as in there if you want to, but it's not required. So this means that we're going to use A as an alias for artist. And down here, we're going to use W as an alias for work. So when you see A dot, we're talking about the artist table. When you see W dot, we're talking about the work table. So what we're going to do in the bottom one is we're going to select the artist ID from the work table, and we're looking for the artist who created this particular work. And then all we have there is the artist ID, and then we're going to go back and we're going to go to the artist table and use the ID to look up that person's last name. So let's give this a try. Let's copy the code here to the clipboard. And then let's flip over to Access. So I've got the tables here. This is not a linked file. I've actually got the tables in this database file. So let's go ahead and let's create a new query. We will close this. Go to SQL View. Paste in our query. So we should find out who is the artist who created a work called Surf and Birds. Let's go ahead and run this, and it tells us that the artist's name is Graves. Let's flip back over to Word. Okay, now let's scroll down and let's take a look at this. We want to find out if the works title field can be used as a key for the works table. Okay, in other words, is that unique? It's obviously not going to work. The table's relatively small, and you can look through it quickly, and you can see that there's more than one work with the same title. But it'd be tougher on a larger table. So we want a query that will tell us the names of any titles that occur more than once in the works table. So we are querying the work table, and in here we are also querying the work table. When we are querying it out here, we are referring to it as W1. When we're referring to it in here, we're referring to it as W2. Okay, and the way that this works is like this. It's basically like a nested for loop. So on the outer loop here, we are going to go to the first record in W1, and then we're going to go through everything in W2, and we're going to look for a place where the title is equal to the one in Title 1, but they have a different work ID. Okay, if they had the same work ID, they'd be the same one. But if they have a different work ID, then it is different. So it's helpful to imagine there are two copies of the work table. So let's go down here and look at two copies of the work table. So I look at this first one in my outer loop. This table is going to be W1. This table over here will be W2. And I'm going to start with 500. I'm going to go through here, and I'm looking for memories for, and I'm also looking for a place where this work ID is not the same as this one. So I'm not going to find this one because the work IDs are different. So I'm going to look all the way through here until I find something else called memories 4, and there is nothing else called memories 4. Then I go back to my outer for loop and I look at this record, and it's 511 Surf and Bird, and so I start looking. I find Surf and Bird here, but I don't select it because 511 is the same as this and they have to be not equal. So I keep on going through all the way down here, and finally I get to another copy of Surf and Bird down here. The titles are equal, the IDs are different, so I'm going to select that. Okay, so that's how it works. Let's go back up and let's take a look at the code here, and let's just copy that. And then let's flip over to Access. Let's write over our previous query. We'll just copy this, or delete this, and paste in the new one. Let's go ahead and run it. And it looks like Farmer's Market occurs more than once, Spanish Dancer occurs more than once, Surf and Bird occurs a bunch of times, and the Fiddler occurs more than once. So in the book, the reason he talks about wanting to do this is to see if a field is unique, and the reason you'd want to see if it was unique would be if you wanted to possibly use it as a key. Obviously, this would not be a good key because it's a long text field, but it demonstrates the idea. Let's flip back over to Word, and let's scroll down a little bit further now. So we had Surf and Bird 4 times out there, I think. The Fiddler occurred more than once. I'm not sure what else occurred more than once, but that'll help us find the duplicate. So here's the result. And here's an easy mistake to make. If you try this, it's the exact same query, except what we had here before was w1.title, work.title. And then this is replacing work2.title again. And so we're going to start out with everything in the first table, and we're going to get work1's work ID. And then we're going to go through here, and we're going to look for a match. But our match here says that the work ID cannot be equal to work2 ID. And so we will never select a title out of this, because it's only going to pick records where the work ID of one is not equal to the work ID of the other. And here is what I think is an easier way to do this. I assume the reason he did this in the book was because he wanted to demonstrate this concept with the correlated subquery. So if I run this one, I'm just saying pull out every title, count how many occurrences of that title there are, and pull that out of the work table, group it by type. You have to do a group by if you're doing an aggregate function up here, which we are with count. And then we're going to put it in descending order. So the one that occurs the most often will be the one that shows up at the top. So let's copy this to the clipboard. Let's flip back over to Access, and let's go to SQL View. Paste that in, and we should get basically the same result that we did before, except it's going to tell us how many there are instead of what they actually are. So we got these before. We did not get these. We probably could have put something in there that said only select them if they are greater than 1, if this expression is greater than 1, and then we would have gotten the same 4 works. Not as many rows, obviously, because we have 5 rows for this, 2 for this, 2 for this, and 2 for this. But that's another way to do it. It's simpler SQL, but it does not demonstrate the correlated subquery that I think our author wanted to demonstrate.